I was probably 9 or 10, maybe. My big brothers, Bob and Dan, decided that they would try to write a rock and roll song because correctly, they had figured out that it was pretty easy music to write, but it seemed like they were making it more difficult than it had to be. They took like 2 months carving on this one song, and I thought, it's got to be easier than that. It wasn't for years that I actually tried my hand at it. My guitar teacher taught me Blowin' in the Wind by Bob Dylan. And I thought, this is just the most beautiful song I've ever heard. And I started writing kind of based on that experience. Went on from there. I was in high school. I had never heard of the Beatles, and then my mom was on her way to work that morning, and she said, I hear this new band on Ed Sullivan tonight that you might be interested in seeing. I was alone in my living room watching Ed Sullivan, which I almost never did anyway. Never heard of this group and was totally floored. Some special energy just entered the room and changed my life. It was at that point that I bought an electric guitar and changed things from acoustic to electric. There are actually two firsts with me in Tulsa. The first one was in the late 60s. I was hired to be a singer-guitar player in a band called the Electric Prunes, which they had had a couple of hit records. Most notably, I Had Too Much to Dream, and then they had an album called Mass in F minor, which had actually done really well. But then a couple of the main guys and the lead singer quit, so they needed some guys to fill the space so that the manager wouldn't get sued, etc. So I got a call from a friend of mine who'd been hired as the keyboard player, and he said, they need a singer, can you do that? I said, okay, so I'll come in. We didn't find a drummer in time, and the manager threatened to sue, which we thought was possible. None of us knew that you couldn't. And so we ended up going on the road, and one of the towns we played in was Tulsa. That wasn't my best experience. First off, we're not the actual Electric Prunes. We're not doing any of their material, and we don't have a drummer. So it was like an audience getting pretty badly ripped off. One of the towns we told that we wore black armbands and told everybody it was a memorial tour for our deceased drummer. That didn't work. And then years later, Loggins and Messina opened for Leon Russell. And Leon was on stage about 3 or 4 songs into the show. There's a fight that breaks out, you know, maybe 20, 30 people. And he stops, he's in the middle of a song, and he stops the song, and he says, I saw enough of that in Tulsa, I don't want to see that here. So everybody chilled out. I'd never seen an artist have that kind of balls to just stop in the middle of the show and straighten something out. It was a big deal to me to share the stage with Leon. You know, I'd been a big fan of his for years. Analog is becoming more and more back in fashion. I don't think it rivals what we had in the 70s, but it still rivals the CD era. If I was recording the way I was recording back when, now I would probably consider doing a live band on analog, like the board you have, which is one of the best. And then at some point, I'd have to transfer to digital. Probably wait till the last minute to do that, so that you can keep as much of the analog quality as possible. The more you go digital to digital, they say there's no loss because it's just numbers, but it sure seems like there is. At this point, it's not necessarily measurable. I'm wondering if analog recorded music affects the brain differently than digitally recorded music. And I think there have been some studies on this, but it would be fun to do brainwave analysis while you do playbacks. The same music on analog as on digital, and see if it affects the brain differently. I'll bet you it does. People right from the very beginning would come to me asking for help with whatever cause. There's no bad cause, everybody's got a good cause. In my position, it's difficult to decide which thing I want to follow up on. There's tons of scientific studies that show that kids who study music do better in school. But that doesn't seem to be getting through to the powers that be. But one of the things I like to do is mentor young artists. And really my biggest teacher as far as working with young people was my daughter, Hannah, who has always been a very tender student. I have to be very careful with what I say and how I say it to keep her in a receptive place. Because when she was really little, she loved to do vocal warm-ups with me. So we'd go back into a room like this where we wouldn't be bothering the rest of the house and just run scales and stuff. And she just thought that was the most fun game ever. So, and then her big brother fancied himself a rapper for a while. He would download tracks, grooves, and then he would make up a rap to that thing. And so she would sort of be his Beyonce and sing the choruses. And the first time she worked with a publisher in London, the producer laid down, just wrote a beat on his computer, and then said, "You go in the studio and sing something." And she goes, "I know this game. We do this all the time." And so she would write songs that way with different producers in London and in Paris while she was in school there. And now she's writing and recording in Austin, Texas. I found that the lessons that I learned from my daughter applied to all young people, but especially young girls. Always stay encouraging, always stay positive, try to get what you need to get without making them feel, especially she'll collapse at a moment's notice. Anywhere the tone in my voice or anything gets a little too you can do this or anything, I don't go there. So then I discovered during certain times in Santa Barbara that I could work with some of the local talent on some projects that were up. I'm talking about working with anything from 11 to 17. They are very tender with their creativity and their confidence. And because I'm who I am, I'm like this untouchable, showbiz guy, what I say carries more weight. And so I can be very helpful if I stay encouraging. Really talented young people are so much fun to work with, because when you put them in the studio, many have never been in a studio, and you start coaching and getting them to sing, and suddenly this whole persona emerges that I don't think they were even aware of, that they could just step up and do something on a pro level.